Good evening, everybody. My name is Chief David Livingstone with the Simi Valley Police Department, and with me tonight is Sergeant Josh McAllister of our Traffic Division. Tonight, we're going to talk about traffic stops. We're going to talk about what to do in case you're pulled over and try to give you a little bit of a better understanding of what some of the perspectives the officers have and hopefully answer some questions you might have about what to do when getting stopped. We understand that getting pulled over by a police officer is never something that when you get out in the car and drive that you plan on doing. However, it's a fact of life, and with traffic increasing in our city, it's something that we're out there doing and enforcing the laws. So in doing this presentation, we're just hoping to take away some of the mystery of it and to give you a few pointers and tips on what you can do in case this does happen. The other thing we want to do is to emphasize how to deal with a situation where there is a violation of the law and maybe some things you can do going forward. At the end of our presentation, we're going to have a series of questions and answers that we're going to open this up for questions so that you can ask questions that we can hopefully provide you answers to. The other thing is our presentation tonight is being simulcast as well in Spanish. And so if you'd like to access the Spanish translation, at the bottom of your screen, there's an interpretation tab. If you tap on that, that will open up to the interpretation in Spanish. The other thing is for the question and answer format, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen rather than the chat function. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation. So getting pulled over is one of those things that, probably all of us at one point or another have had that experience, including myself. And I can tell you that, even as a police officer in the times that I've been pulled over, it causes a certain amount of stress, no matter what the circumstances are. And, sometimes we're in a hurry, sometimes we're doing things and we don't pay attention to the law. And you have the occasion to run across a police officer and be pulled over. Understanding that there are so many vehicle codes, at times there are lots of different violations that sometimes we're not even aware of that we might commit. So the objective of our presentation tonight is really to discuss what to do and what can happen in a circumstance where you might find yourself pulled over by a police officer. There are different categories of what we call pullovers or traffic stops that you might see officers conducting in a variety of situations. One of those, and the most common, are traffic enforcement pullovers, and that's pretty much 90% of what we do in law enforcement in terms of traffic enforcement. So you most likely, if you do get pulled over, that's what is going to be the circumstances of the case. Investigative pullovers are another thing that we do, and that might be that somebody is seen leaving the scene of a crime, or they fit the description, and an officer does an investigative pullover that's based on probable cause to determine if, in fact, the individual driving the vehicle is involved in a crime. The other traffic stop that you might see out there sometimes, and these are the things that you see on TV a lot, are these high-risk pullovers. High-risk pullovers are just a way for officers to tactically handle a situation that might involve an armed suspect and do it in a safe manner for not only the officers, but the suspects and the surrounding public. So you'll see these sometimes on TV at the end of a pursuit, or you might see them in reference to a traffic stop for a wanted felon or fugitive. So the reason, when a traffic stop happens, the officers have to have probable cause, a vehicle code violation. So there has to be a reason to believe the driver has committed a traffic infraction, or, like I explained earlier, another type of a violation, or they, somebody matching the description of a car that might just be fleeing the scene of a crime. And that there is usually a general expectation that the pullover is going to result in a citation, especially when it is involving a traffic violation, because, as I said earlier, we know that our roads are crowded with cars, and it's just one of those things that we do regularly to try to ensure the safety of the driving public. So I know this seems like an obvious question. How do I know I'm being pulled over? Well, this is important because we have procedures that we follow, and there are some general things that you should pay attention to, and this is for your safety as well as for the officer. So officers will position their patrol vehicle directly behind the vehicle they intend on pulling over. The officer activates their emergency lights, possibly the siren, not all the time. Sometimes they just activate the lights, and if you see the red lights, then you would proceed to pull over. If a driver fails to respond to the emergency lights, then you might activate the siren. The officer may honk the horn, alternate the high beams, maybe pan the spotlight, and even use hand gestures to have somebody pull over to the side of the road. And ultimately, as you've seen, maybe sometimes they'll use their PA system. All of our police vehicles are equipped with that, and they may give a verbal command to pull over. The important thing about this is that, the officer should be in a uniform and it should be readily identifiable as a police officer. And if not, then, the best thing for you to do is to drive to another location and utilize your cell phone or go to the police station or any other location that you can go to, because sometimes there are situations that come up where somebody might have a red light and they might be playing a game or something like that. So again, the officer pulling you over should be readily identifiable. You should recognize it as a police car, and you pull over to the side of the road safely. So again, main thing is to stay calm. And I know this is easier said than done, because like I said, even the times that I've been pulled over, there's automatically a sense of tension that comes from being pulled over by the police. Again, there are emotional experiences for people. And a lot of times when I've made traffic stops, the biggest thing I notice with people is they're very, very nervous and sometimes visibly shaking. And so the best thing you can do is just try to stay as calm as possible. So, indicate that you've acknowledged the officer by, turning your car to the side of the road, pulling to the side of the road. Utilize your turn signal. You can also utilize your emergency flashers, and that way, basically, you're being as safe as you possibly can. The question often comes up where, what happened? What if there's no place to pull over? This is a factor of where you are when the traffic stop occurs. So you don't want to just pull over to the side of the road in a situation that's going to make you and the officer unsafe. If there are parked cars there, just proceed to the nearest area that you can pull to the side of the curb safely and do that. So again, you don't want to block traffic or put yourself in a situation where you're obstructing the lanes and things like that. So now that you pulled over, what happens next? Again, these are simple things you can do to make things easier for both yourself and the officer. Number one, turn off your car engine, and if you have the radio on, you want to turn your radio off. The most important thing, and I think it's critical, and you might even want to wait to turn your car off until the officer asks you to do that if you feel more comfortable, but keep your hands either on the steering wheel or in a place where they are readily visible. That's the thing that makes officers most nervous during a traffic stop, is when you start fumbling around for a driver's license and reaching in different places and things like that, and that can raise the alertness of the officer. So again, the main thing is keep your hands where they're visible. If it's at night, you might want to turn on your interior dome light so that it's easier for the officer to see you when he approaches the vehicle. So the officer is going to contact you shortly after you're pulled over. They'll approach the vehicle through on the driver's side, and sometimes they may approach on the passenger side. And that, again, that depends. You'll see this a lot of times on the freeway with the CHP. When they make traffic stops, they'll approach on the passenger side because, again, they're on if it's a busy street and it's a busy freeway, it's dangerous for the officer to approach on the driver's side. So they're going to contact you, and they're going to ask you for the basic things. They're going to ask you for your driver's license, your registration, and the proof of your insurance. Now, a lot of times what happens in a traffic stop, and I know from my experience that people instantly want to know why they're pulled. Why did you pull me over? What did I do wrong? And, there's this instant, understandable anxiety that goes with it. And so the officer may say, I'll explain that to you once I see your driver's license and registration. And at that time, if you haven't turned your car off and your radio, the officer may ask you to do that. And the primary thing is just to listen to the directions that you're given, and the officer will explain to you the reason why you're pulled over. here's a good thing. If you don't have that material, like your license and registration, right in front of you at the time, and you have to reach into the glove box, or you have to, maybe if you reach into a purse or reach into a center console to get it, before you do that, just explain to the officer that your driver's license is, in the center console, or it's in your purse, and let them know what you're going to do, and so that you're reaching in areas that the officers can observe your hands. Remember, the important thing is that keeping your hands visible is the critical part. The officer might ask you things like, are there any extenuating circumstances as to why you committed the traffic violation? Are you in a hurry? Is there something going on? There might be an emergency in your family and things like that. And so there may be a brief discussion about that. The officer will explain to you, well, I noticed you didn't stop for the red light, or you're speeding. Did you know how fast you were going? Did you recognize you didn't stop at the stop sign? Those aren't questions to be condescending or to be, to try to intimidate you. They're questions basically to try to really kind of de-escalate the situation in a sense, because maybe you are in a hurry. Maybe there is a family emergency. I've pulled over people that are on their way to the hospital to have a baby. And so, that's something that's important to tell the officer. So, these extenuating circumstances are ways we de-escalate traffic stops, and also, helping us to understand what's going on a little bit better. So again, once you're pulled over, there's a lot of things that take place, and I'm probably being repetitive to an extent. For those of you who have been pulled over, these will be familiar to you, so it won't be anything that's new. But after the officer gets the driver's license and the paperwork, your registration or insurance, they normally are going to go back to the patrol vehicle or their motorcycle. And the reason to do this is to really check and make sure that your license is valid, to make sure there's no wants or warrants on the car, it's not stolen. Just this is a routine part of the job of any kind of a traffic stop. The other thing is after they finish this records check, the officer is going to usually just make that decision in that period of time, whether to issue a warning or to issue a citation. And this is purely a discretionary act. Police officers in the Simi Valley Police Department are not given quotas. They're not told that they have to write tickets. They're told basically to use their discretion and to enforce the law in a fair way. So sometimes the officer may come back to your vehicle and communicate with you again and say, I'm going to give you a warning. And we have it in Simi Valley what are called warning cards. And on the warning cards, the officer may ask for your name and your date of birth, your driver's license number. That's not a citation. You don't go to court. It's just, basically a record that you've been stopped. If you are issued a citation, then there'll be more information that they ask you at that time or that they get from your driver's license. So again, important thing, when the officer does come back to your vehicle, make sure your hands are visible. And this isn't anything that you have to stress out about, but just, basic, routine. Just keep your hands, and basically the steering wheel is a good place to do that. When the officer returns to the car, he's going to give you the warning, or he's going to issue you the citation. So oftentimes, I know this happens, we disagree with the fact that we're given a citation. And very important, don't argue, because the reason behind it is not that you're admitting guilt by signing a citation. All you're doing is you're acknowledging the nature of the citation and promising to appear in court. It is not an admission of guilt. And the good thing about this is that you have the option to contest the citation in court. There's usually a court date given to you 30 days from the traffic stop. You have the option to either pay the ticket, appear in court. You can contest it, plead not guilty. And the reason I say don't argue, because it's not something that can be solved on the side of the road, nor should it be. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to feel that maybe something was done in error. You can certainly ask the officer questions and do it in a respectful way, and the officer will answer those questions. Again, it's not something that you want to debate on the side of the road. And you may want to come back at a later point in time, and I've seen this happen in cases where I've issued citations. the driver comes back and photographs the intersection and then goes to court. And people think sometimes, well, if you go to court, the judge always takes the officer's side, and that's not true. I know I've been in cases many times where I've issued citations, and the judge, rules on behalf of the violator because they were able to prove these extenuating circumstances. So again, like I said, don't argue. It's just not going to solve anything at that point in time, and it's not safe to do so on the side of the road. So basically, at this point in time, that's about it. Again, traffic stops are emotional incidents. They're stressful for all of us, including the police officers, and but they're something that are a routine part of what we do. And we teach our officers to be courteous. And so, if you have questions when you're pulled over, the officer should identify who they are. We all wear nameplates, and so you can, if you don't see the nameplate clearly, you're perfectly within your rights and should ask the officer what their name is. You can ask them for their ID number. A lot of people may ask for badge number, and here in the Simi Valley Police Department, we use ID numbers rather than badge numbers. So either way, the officer will give you that, and it'll also be on the citation if you get a citation. So you'll know what you need to do. If there's something that occurs during the traffic stop that you don't understand or that you're not happy with, you can always ask the officer to speak to a supervisor, and we have supervisors in the field that can come out, and especially if you disagree with the citation, you can ask to see the officer's supervisor, and our supervisors will come out and they will talk to you and try to determine what happened in the circumstance. So at this point, if there are any questions, we'll check the Q&A function here and see what we have here. The other thing is that if there are any questions that you can think of, going forward, you're welcome to email those to myself or to Sergeant McAllister. He is our traffic supervisor, and he's out in the field. And so if a dispute does come up, it's likely that you're going to see him come to the call or come to the traffic stop and talk to you. But in the meantime, if there are any questions after this presentation tonight, we're happy to take them. You can email them to policedepartment.com or through the city's website. And this webinar will be available also on YouTube for you to log into and review at any time if there are anything that you would like to ask. And with that, we will go ahead and conclude the webinar tonight. And please, if you have any topics that you would like to introduce for a future forum, we'd be happy to take those. And we have a couple questions coming in here, so I'll take a look here. So I occasionally drive with my purse in my trunk. If I'm stopped, should I automatically pop my trunk or wait until requested to do so? That's a great question. And I think what I would do is wait till you're requested to do so. Don't activate anything on the car in any way. It's better just to explain that to the officer when he comes up and asks for your license, that essentially it's in your trunk, and you'll open the trunk and get it out. Another question here: are there any violations that officers have to write a ticket for and can't let the driver off with a warning? That's a great question. Most of the time, there's discretion, and the officers have the discretion of doing the warning or the citation with minor violations. However, when it comes to things like DUI or reckless driving or driving with an open container, those are situations where you're going to get a citation, and those are things that are a little bit less discretionary, depending again on the circumstances of it. Another question here: what statistics or data do you maintain regarding traffic stops which are actively managing? And I'll maybe turn that over to Sergeant McAllister in terms of the traffic unit, what kind of statistics we keep for traffic safety and things like that.
Well, for the traffic stops or traffic citation data, all the tickets are logged into our record system, and we can go back and research our record system for any specific violations. All the tickets, if we issue a citation, have demographical data: name, address, date of birth, and what the violation was, location. And then also on warnings, if the officers are filling out the warning cards when they submit them, those are also submitted into our records database. So we can kind of go back and search really anything we want that's been documented, written down, and turned into our records division.
Good question. Another question here. If I'm in the fast lane on the freeway, what is the safest way to pull over, and should I exit the freeway? That's a great question, because the freeway is obviously a dangerous place to pull over to the side. And so if you can, if you're close to an exit, it would probably be better to exit the freeway. If you're in a place where there are no exits, pull as far over to the to the right as you can, and come to a stop. And if that's not a safe place to stop, what often happens is the officer will use the PA, and they will direct you and tell you can continue to the next exit or continue on. And that way you realize you're not you're doing anything illegal or anything by not yielding right away. So great question. The freeway can be really dangerous. Any of you who've had a disabled vehicle and had to pull over and wait for a tow on the side of the freeway will know that, because vehicles are going 65 plus on the freeway, and it makes it very dangerous. Another thing, and as I wait for maybe some more questions to come in, just to summarize, really, in terms of being pulled over at night, I can't emphasize enough, just if you can, to put that your dome light on, and that way it really puts the officer at least a little bit more at ease in the fact that they don't have to shine the light in the car necessarily, and they can see where your hands are. And again, the important thing is the communication. Listen to the directions, and cooperate. And if you need help with something, or you want to ask, like, I've got my license in the glove compartment, or it's in the console, please don't hesitate to do that. We're going to try to facilitate that as best as we can under the circumstances. Okay, so seeing no other questions coming in right now, like I said, please don't hesitate to send those to us by email, and this presentation will be available. And again, the other thing you can send us by email are any requests for any future topics that are of interest to you out in the community. We pride ourselves on doing the best job we can, and trying to be as responsive as we can. And so we want to find topics that are interesting and things that will help better foster the relationship with the community, because I believe communication and understanding are a big part of a lot of the things that we try to do going forward. We've got one more question coming up here. Would you please explain why, while so many times there will be 2 or more units at traffic stops? I know the answer, but hear lots of comments from others. Okay. So there's a variety of reasons for this. Sometimes an officer may call for an extra unit or a backup. There might be a reason why the officer is nervous for something or has observed something. So that's one reason. Another time, at other times, the officer will call for a backup to conduct, maybe have somebody step out of the car for a DUI enforcement or to do a field sobriety test, and it's unsafe to do that by themselves, and having another person there is helpful. Sometimes, believe it or not, officers stop because they are just naturally out there checking on each other when they hear a traffic stop, and they may not hear from their partner for an extended period of time, and so they'll pull over and stop with the officer. And then oftentimes they'll stay there with them until the traffic stop's completed. So mainly for safety, because in Simi Valley we don't really in our patrol units we have single officer patrol cars. We don't have partners working in most beats. So that's another reason why that happens. So thank you for that. It's a great question. Okay. So again, I'd like to thank the community for the information that we get back and forth, and for the participation. And please send us requests for any future meeting or future topics. We're happy to share what we do here, the work we're doing here at the police department. The officers out there pride themselves on keeping the community safe and making it a good place to live and work. So thank you very much, and hope you all have a good evening and stay safe.